Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for part 1 of 2 of the Illumination Works Advanced AR webinar series. In today's session, we'll be covering advanced techniques for augmented 3D instructions to boost workforce safety and performance. You'll learn how you can efficiently author and publish scalable AR experiences that improve assembly, quality, and inspection. Just some quick housekeeping notes before we do get started today. This session is being recorded and the recording will be distributed accordingly after completion. Should you have any questions, we ask that you please type them into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen or the chat feature. We're going to use some dedicated time at the end here to answer all those questions as best we can. So please, we encourage you to ask away. This is going to be a power-packed 30 minutes, so I just want to start things off with a quick introduction to our panelists. First off, John Mitchell, the Chief Technology Officer and CEO of Illumination Works. John, how are you?
Afternoon.
And also Jim Blau, the Digital Transformation Expert at Illumination Works. How are you doing today, Jim?
Hey, Connor.
And I am Connor Sullivan, Partner Marketing in the Americas at PTC, and I'll be the moderator today. But gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and to everyone else in the audience, thank you. And without further ado, I'll pass it off to Jim to get things started for us. Jim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Connor. So as Connor indicated, today we're going to give you some advanced capabilities of Studio. And I preface it by saying, if you didn't have the opportunity to view our earlier webinars, there was a series of 3, one of which included Studio, kind of the basics. I ask that you go back and view that at a later point. I think you'll find that valuable. So Studio, Vuforia Studio is a highly efficient, easy to use authoring tool. It provides a very immersive AR experience, and they're made up of multiple components, of which we'll talk about in a second. One of the key things in what you really see when John goes through the demo is that there are no software development skills required. You'll see this is a true drag and drop environment. So what makes up Vuforia Studio, and what's kind of the whole total picture? So the Studio piece is where I create this immersive AR experience that I can then scale out. And you'll see how John does that. We'll go through kind of the steps of how that works. And then Vuforia's View, which accompanies Studio, is how I actually access it and view that experience so that I can then provide it. We create it once, we then provide it out, and View can be run on multiple different components. John will use an iPad, that could be a mobile device, that could be a wearable. And it's the same product, same viewer across all those different environments. So what makes up the components in an AR experience? So we start out with a physical object. In our case today, what we're using is a CNC machine. Something, and you'll see John will bring that into the experience. And then he's going to couple that with the digital aspects of that. He's going to bring CAD environment in. He could bring images in, and then he's going to marry that with IoT data, and that's where it really becomes powerful. And you'll see that capability. We have the 2D digital overlay. That's where he creates buttons, images, pop-ups, and you'll see how he goes through that. And those 3 components make up our AR experience, which I think you'll find very fascinating as John goes through that. So what makes up Studio? It's a simple UI design. It's a template-based, widget-based capability, drag and drop, as I mentioned. You don't need software development skills to do it. And then we integrate the content. We integrate CAD, we can integrate an AR capabilities into it. And then we provide animation. What we did in our previous webinar, you could actually see that with a drill press. You'll see kind of how that experience is today with the CNC machine. And then we can couple that with Internet of Things through Thingworx. So bringing in that IoT data and really augmenting and making this a true AR experience. And then we provide this thing called tracking targets. That's how we really get immersive. That's how we get into the AR experience. There's things called a thing mark or mobile target. Today, John will kind of show you the spatial target and how he is able to place that within, kind of quite frankly, over top of his Christmas tree in that environment. And there's other ways, and we'll go into in our later webinars the other type of targets. So with Studio, I create the experience. I then have the capability of previewing it, and John will show that. He'll actually kind of, he doesn't actually show that, but he can kind of demonstrate that. We then publish it out. We can provide some editing. And then one of the things we're going to talk about today is how can I use extensions with JavaScript? And John's going to show that capability with the navigation extension available, which accompanies Studio. So with Studio, we create this, we publish it out to the Vuforia Experience Service, and then through the viewer, Vuforia View, I'm able to access that by, in our case, the spatial tracking. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John for the demo.
Great, thanks, Jim. Thanks everybody, and shout out to Haas Manufacturing. They make their CAD available online to pretty much anybody. So we're going to use one of their CAD files, fairly detailed to make this more relevant and useful to everybody. Wanted to throw up this chart again that Jim has on the screen. Another way to think about all of these different piece parts of the Vuforia infrastructure. And the thing we're going to talk about first today is really this bottom piece called Thingworx. For those that don't know, it is an IoT integration platform, and what we're going to use it for is to pull in some simulated data into our AR experience. This could be in a live situation, data connected. We can connect Thingworx directly to equipment, controllers, or even data repositories, and use that back end to pull in live information to our AR experiences. So they could be anything from sensor readings to maintenance actions. Really anything you can think of in the context of an application, we can leverage Thingworx to pull that in. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. Let me turn my video off so I'm not distracting to everybody. Jim, do you see my Thingworx, excuse me, Vuforia Studio web app open?
I can, John.
Okay, so this is our Vuforia Studio application. It's a local development environment, runs in a browser. Here are some of my previous applications, and actually a couple we're going to show you today. So the first steps to linking IoT data from Thingworx to Vuforia Studio to an application is we're going to create a new experience. I'm going to select from these templates. We're going to say mobile by default. Choose a name, and we're going to create this template. With that, I have a number of screens in Vuforia Studio. I have my project navigation bar here to the left. I have a widgets bar that allows me to use drag and drop capability, and this particular one has a lot of extensions, which we'll show in the second half of this webinar. My canvas area, and you can see I have a 3D canvas and a 2D canvas. I have a view area, which gives me property values, and then we'll show you this data pane here in a second. So I don't have a live CNC machine. I'm going to treat my Christmas tree as one of those, but in order to do this, we're going to use a spatial target. We're going to drag that on here. What this is going to allow me to do is place a digital CNC machine in my office here. I need a model, so I'm going to drag that onto my screen. What this is going to give me is my base 3D object. I can upload various file formats in terms of CAD or other digital images. I'm going to select this file. And what I've done in a previous iteration is I've actually taken the Haas model and converted it into a file that's natively and more easily used by Vuforia Studio. I'll select that file, upload that. And here we have our CNC machine in our space. I'm going to do a couple housekeeping items. I'm going to change the scale of this, shrink it down a little bit. I'm going to put it on the ground. I have to change my Y coordinate so that it doesn't float in the air. And then on my spatial target, I'm going to make sure that I can do a resize as well. So I'm going to enable the scale gesture. And what that'll allow me to do is once I place this CNC machine, I've got certain gestures that I can use on my iPad, pan, rotate, and then this specific one for scaling. This is really all we're going to do for my 3D experience. For this application, the intro to Vuforia Studio that we did over the summer has other capabilities. Check out that video on our YouTube page if you're interested as well. Now I need to build my 2D experience, and what this is going to allow me to do is interact with this application. So think of a regular web application or a desktop application. I've got buttons, I've got text boxes. This 2D canvas is an area where I can build that for my application. I'm going to change my form factor up here. See, I've got a lot of different sizes. So I have an iPad Pro that we're going to be using for demonstration purposes. So I'm going to change that, and then I'm going to add some input and some output options here. I have a button that I'm going to add to this top, and we're going to have an action on that. This is going to be scanning a machine. I've got a scan widget that I'm going to drag and drop here. And once I invoke this, what this is going to allow me to do is scan a barcode, which will allow me to show different systems data. You can use a number of different unique identifiers. For this particular one, we're going to make a simulation where I have multiple CNC machines, and I can walk up and scan the barcode on that CNC machine, and then Vuforia Studio through Thingworx is going to pull back that machine's data to my application. A couple other things we're going to use here are value display, and there's a couple different properties here. A little bit of formatting in terms of style sheets, which we'll show here in a second. I'm going to zero out my value. I'm going to change my label name. To model, just so that my text doesn't look really silly. We'll add some minor formatting. And then you have 4 different types with this. I can do it inline. I can do it inline with the label. We're actually going to choose stack label from a layout perspective. And then I have a couple more objects here, a couple more label values, value display, excuse me. We're going to add, and then we'll show you a fully featured one with 5 different values here in a second. So I'm changing my styles, I'm zeroing out my value, and then I'm creating some headers for this so that I know what I'm looking at. Once again, very drag and drop, taking advantage of those full features. We have to do a couple objects. So I've got to bind some of these things like scan machine to, if I click on that, what do I want it to do? You see down here in the right-hand details side, I have properties, and then down here I have events. So different things like buttons, I interact with them. I have click events. I have other events based on different kinds of widgets. This particular one, we've said you don't have to use programming in order to do this. So I have this drag and drop feature. So when I click this event, I want to do something here with this scan widget. I'm going to drag that over, and it's going to pop up a binding box. And when I say, hey, when I hit button 1, what I want to have happen, I want to start my scan. So if I go over to the scan widget real quick, there's a start scan service, and you see this darker arrow coming in. What I've done is I've said, click this button, run this application, or run this subsegment, excuse me, of code. I'm going to add some data to this now, and in order to do that, I've got this data pane over here on the right. I opened it up by clicking this far right icon. Very simply, I can say add external data. And then what I have here is really a number of templates, resources, and this is connected directly to my local Thingworx instance. I'm going to pick this sample 12345A thing. And then adding these data elements in terms of properties or even services that I can call is as simple as clicking on these little plus boxes. I've said, hey, here's the 5 data elements that I care about that I want to bring into my experience. I've added them, and I now have these that I can then drag with this little arrow into property values or other interactions. I have a model number here, sorry. I have a model number. I'm going to take this arrow, I'm going to drag it over to this model widget. And so when I get value in that property, I want to put it in the value field of this label. I'm just going to do a couple of these. And bind that. So this is our sample application. We pulled data in. If I click on preview, it really doesn't show a whole lot. Some unformatted data. I don't have any style sheets in here. In terms of formatting, things have been kind of cut off. I potentially want to make some more changes. So I'm going to go over to my other one here. I'm going to copy this style sheet. I'm going to insert it into my application style. I'm going to go back to my container. And then I want to say, hey, on this, I'm going to have a class object, which for those that know HTML, it's a very identical scenario here, button 3D. And I'm going to say blue. I save that. And now I've changed the formatting of this button to that. As you can see some of these other scenarios here, I've changed the font and formatting of those. So when I save this file and do a preview again, I now have some better formatting in my, I haven't done anything to this bottom one, but now I have interactions and some formatting capability. So I'm going to go back to one that I finished the other day and pull this up. And as you can see right here on my canvas, I've even shrunk this a little bit more, and that was to do some stuff with layout. But across this, I have the same bindings. I have the event bindings. If I open my data panel up, I see all of these. I think the other thing that this one demonstrates here is when I scan this, I have this scanned value property that comes in. So when I run this scan service, I get a value in this property. What I've done is I've drugged this over into my external data. And what Thingworx will allow me to do, because I have multiple objects, things created with the same template, all I have to do is change the dynamic entity name or bind this value to that. And that'll allow me to pull in different sets of data. I could do it other ways with Thingworx, with Vuforia Studio. It's very flexible, but everything in here I've done with drag and drop. So with that, I'm going to pull up my iPad to show you what this looks like in real time. All right. So I have my iPad screen up here, and I'm going to launch my View application. And these are some sample studio experiences. And down at the bottom, I have this CNC Web IoT demo. So I'm going to launch this. I'm going to turn around here. And as I recognize my space, you can see I now have a CNC machine that I can place. Some more advanced features, we potentially have targets. I could actually overlay this on a live CNC machine. For this demonstration, obviously, we're going to have to substitute with a Christmas tree. But I basically placed this in space, and now I can walk around it and see all these different angles. As you can see up at the top, I don't have any data on that top left, but I do have the ability to interact with that button. So I'm going to click Scan Machine, and I'm going to scan a different object. So I got this 12345B barcode. So if I'm going to quickly go back to my web browser, and I'm going to go into Thingworx, and so this is my Composer dashboard, and I have this particular thing, this 12345B. I'm going to pull open this property tab, and as you can see here, for these 5 properties that we highlighted and said, hey, pull these into my studio application, I don't have any values. So naturally, if I go over to my experience, I scan that barcode, I shouldn't see anything up here being pulled in live. If I click on a different one, the CNC webinar thing, go over to these properties, I've preset some of these values. So in this scenario, I don't have anything live connected to, but I could be pulling these in dynamically from a piece of equipment. For this example, I've just hard coded them. And going back to our webinar, I'm going to scan this object, this barcode. And as you can see up in the top, I have data now in each one of my fields. My HNL 5501 value populates in my model. My serial number comes across, and these can really be any values. I can pull maintenance information in. I can pull live programmatic cut speeds. You know, think of a CNC machine. I've got RPMs. I've got power consumption. I've got current tool that's in the cutter. All of those values can be pulled in dynamically and consumed in your AR experience. So that's it for our IoT integration section. The second demonstration today, we're going to go back to my projects. It is what's called one of the Vuforia Studio extensions. These are currently custom JavaScript widgets that have been built by various folks. The particular one I'm going to show you was published by the CTO of PTC Vuforia. They're currently not supported. Some of these may find their way into supported products, but each one of them is a set of custom widgets that allow me to do more advanced capability. So I have a similar scenario where I've created an AR experience with this CNC machine, and all of these different widgets are going to exist down here in my widgets pane. If I go down to the bottom, I have this what's called this navigator widget, and this gives you a point of view, almost guided set of wayfinder markers in the context of your AR or your 3D model. So that could be a 3D model I'm overlaying on an actual CNC machine. This could be like we're showing you here today, a virtual CNC machine just placed over on the position. And it's especially useful in quality inspections, safety checks, or other procedures where ordered guidance is extremely important to follow. So in order to show you the first piece, I'm gonna click on this navigator widget here, and we've got a couple different properties, once again, in terms of this detail pane that I can interact with. I can change the device in terms of how I want this to function. What you'll see here in a second, I've got some head, and there's head and feet that display. I can change some colors, change this cutoff distance. Then I have a number of services. These are going to be ways to interact with the widget itself. As I said earlier, these currently are not fully functional supported capabilities. So there's a good friend of mine at PTC on the AR team, Steve Wall, showed me a little secret to be able to use this widget. We have to create some code and an application to capture all these different data points. So I'm going to click over. It's easier to show you this live. So I'm going to click over to my iPad again. Make sure I'm sharing my screen. Yep, there we go. And what I have is a location creator, courtesy of Steve Wall. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to put this CNC machine in my space. Now, if you notice, this one's slightly different. And what I've done is I've hidden, some of these panels so that I can kind of see inside this. And I'm going to start over here on the right-hand side of this, and I'm going to kind of hunker down. And what I want to do is I want to click this mark location button. What that's going to give me is a data point that says, hey, look here, position your device, in this case an iPad, at that angle, which is going to be a gaze property, and record that data point. I'm going to go over to the front. I'm going to do the same thing, except for I'm not going to hunker down. I'm going to say mark my location. Then I'm going to go over here to the right side and look at the tool carriage of this machine, and I'm going to mark a third location. So what does that all mean? Well, at the end of the day, what I've done is allow the widget captures these data points. And these data points are perspectives and positional indicators in context to your AR application. What I've got to do in order to take advantage of this is take these data points and use them in my AR experience to create an application. So for this particular one, let's go back here. Let me pull up in the one that we've actually used. We'll go to my JavaScript file. I've hard coded these values into my JavaScript parameter, marked to data. I could write these dynamically back to a repository like Thingworx and then pull those on the fly. For sake of demonstration, I've just hard coded them. But what this is going to do is build an application that says at these different points, show me a positional indicator and allow me to walk through those different values. So if I go back to, too many windows here. If I go back to my walk around and I put my CNC machine back, I should have, as I advance, stand here, i.e. green on the floor. Up here I have a head and a gaze, so it's kind of like angled down, look down here. In this particular one, I think I did the front first. So as I pull back, if you notice, there's an overlay. So it fades out as I get to the point where my angle is correct. Look here, I could add other context to this. I could be filling out forms. I could be doing checklists, all in this application. I've got this little right arrow down here. I'm gonna click next, and as you can see, I've got these kind of yellow overlaid dots in my gaze. And so I've got this guided position. Now we need to walk over here based on the position of this, stand here and look in that side. I'm gonna advance one more time. And it's asking me to walk over here, stand here, and look down. So once again, a guided procedure, step by step, based on the order that I've got my data points in, to provide very specific instruction to your users of your application. With that, I'm done with my portion. I'm going to turn it back over to Jim.
Thank you, John. I think everybody found that very, very enlightening, very exciting. You'll see the capabilities of you get to see the capabilities of Studio. So this is one, as Colin said, this is one of two webinars we have in our advanced series. The next one will be December the 15th. This will be an advanced session on expert capture. We did a previous one on expert capture in the summer. And that will be our last webinar of 2020. Coming in 2021 is an opportunity for an IoT and smart factory or bases capability. We're going to show off Thingworx and the capabilities there, and that will be in early March, and you'll see invitations from that. So we really appreciate that. So with that, as we kind of close out, we appreciate everybody joining. We hope that you found the demo kind of interesting, and we would love the opportunity to further talk to you about how Vuforia's portfolio can be used, and for that matter, the Thingworx IoT offering can be used for your company. And we would offer the opportunity to have conversations with you. We would also could do a custom demo and really see how your use cases could benefit from this capability. If you have questions, there's John's contact and my contact information. We'd be happy to do that. So let me turn it back to Colin for a couple of questions as we close out.
Sure, thanks, Jim. So I did just launch a poll. We are really looking for some feedback, extremely honest feedback. This is an anonymous poll, so I see already about 10 people have gone ahead and answered some of those questions. So thank you for your participation. And then if you can stick around for just one more minute or so, we do have one more other poll that we want to put out there just to get some feedback about you, the audience, and understand, where you might be at in your AR journey. But again, to Jim's point, please join us on December 15th at noon Eastern time for session number 2, Vuforia Expert Capture. And if there are any questions, you can submit those into the Q&A box now. We might be able to get some time to answer those, but we'll take note of everything, and John and Jim will be reaching out to you. So I'm gonna give this first poll just a couple more seconds here, and then I'm gonna launch the other and just get some more feedback from our audience, and then if no questions come in, we'll drop off. All right, so I'm gonna close the first one, and then just one more poll here, just to learn a little bit about you, the audience. So again, thank you. We really appreciate all the feedback. It's very beneficial for all of us to understand as we move forward here, and continuing these hopefully very informative webinar sessions.
Looks like we have a quick question from Paul. Website link. I'm assuming this is for Vuforia. Tool itself would be vuforia.com. Illumination Works' website is www.ilwllc. In there, you'll see links to most of these things as well. And then the previous webinars, I believe Kathy has posted those on our YouTube channel. You can look up Illumination Works and AR, and they should be out there.
All right, so we've got some good participation from this poll. I think we're gonna go ahead and close it out now. But again, thanks everyone for joining today. Jim and John, for the presentation, and hopefully we'll see everyone on the 15th at noon Eastern time for the expert capture presentation. Thanks everybody, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.